Right, it's good to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me, and it's great to be a part of a group with such a smart and handsome group of people to be able to discuss a very wide-ranging topic, which is very important today. You know, the one of the topic that I'm addressing as a lawyer is this Uyghur Tribunal. I mean, this so-called People's Court, this so-called Uyghur Tribunal, and the idea to kind of unmask it. The one thing I learned, I mean, even as a kid, my father would always say that a pancake, no matter how flat it is, always has two sides. And what we are not getting from the Uyghur Tribunal, the so-called People's Tribunal, is that it's not a court. It's actually what we would call a kangaroo court. It's an American terminology. You'd think it would come from Australia, but a kangaroo court is a court that ignores recognized standards of law or justice and carries little or no official standing in the territory where it resides, and is typically convened ad hoc. This kangaroo court is this tribunal, and it ignores due process and has come to a predetermined conclusion. And I'm going to kind of unpack this a little bit, but as ostensibly this kangaroo court terminology with regards to the Uyghur Tribunal, it comes from this idea that it makes leaps like a kangaroo, in other words, jumping over and intentionally ignoring evidence that would be in favor of one party in a predetermined outcome. So that's kind of what our friend, I mean, Jeffrey Nice, I'm going to call him a friend because I guess he must be lost, with regards to convening this Uyghur Tribunal, this People's Tribunal, and really conducting what's a show trial. So in essence, there's a predetermined outcome. Jeffrey Nice has been selected for the specific reason that he was leading an international tribunal that actually was an international tribunal. This is no more than a farce. And what it has come up with is a kind of a show trial. And a show trial, just for everybody's edification, is a public trial in which the authorities have already determined the guilt or innocence of a party, which is what they've done with the People's Republic of China with regards to this. The actual trial has as its only goal the presentation of the accusation and the verdict to the public, so they will serve as both an impressive example and a warning. And these show trials tend to be retributive rather than corrective, and they're also conducted for propaganda purposes. So what do we have with the Uyghur Tribunal? Let me just tell you as a lawyer what it is. The Uyghur Tribunal is a company. It's a company limited by guarantee. So it means it's a not-for-profit corporation. There's many such corporations that exist, but it was set up for specific propaganda purposes. So that gets lost in the shuffle in the media and the headlines where they're saying there's this People's Tribunal. What people, Mr. Nice? What people? A bunch of actors? What people? A bunch of people making accusations. So what can I tell you for sure? Xinjiang is part of China. Xinjiang people are Chinese people. What's the tribunal? It's actually, like I said, it's a company limited by guarantee. It was funded $150,000 by another company limited guarantee called the World Uyghur Congress, whatever the heck that is. And the Uyghur Tribunal is supposed to be a so-called independent tribunal based in the UK to so-called examine evidence and so-called human rights abuses by the Chinese. But it should be actually under something called the Genocide Convention. So not everybody's referencing the Genocide Convention on a daily basis. So let me unpack it a little bit for you. The word genocide didn't start until in the 1940s. It was by a Polish Jewish lawyer who set out what happened in Europe under Adolf, what was happening with Nazi Germany and Adolf Hitler. And then in 1948, they codified it under the Genocide Convention. There was actually an avenue in which all these nations had signed up to be able to try this matter. And as I said before, Jeffrey Nice was a lead prosecutor in one of these actions in a trial of Slobodan Milosevic. And this was set forth by the United Nations, okay? Not a company limited by guarantee, but the United Nations itself. It was signed up by members of the treaty, and they went ahead with this thing under an actual law. So the International Criminal Tribunal of former Yugoslavia, And so I think what's been created here, which is a great public relations stunt, it's a great media run, but it's not law. It is just an issue that has been set up in order to try to make China look bad. So there is a law to be able to do it. And like I said, it's under the law of the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, or the Genocide Convention. When this was founded in 1948, I'll tell you a little interesting anecdote, is that one of the first accusations under this law that was submitted to the UN after the convention was entered into force concerned the treatment of Black Americans, for goodness sakes. The Civil Rights Congress drafted a 237-page petition arguing that even after 1945, the United States had been responsible for hundreds of wrongful deaths, both legal, extra-legal, as well as numerous other genocidal abuses. Leaders from the Black community, and these are well-known people, William Patterson, Paul Robertson, and W.E.B. Du Bois, had presented this petition to the United States in 1951, to the United Nations, in 1951. However, these accusations were, under the civil rights, and it did not go anywhere. But what my point is that past is prologue, and take a look at what happened back then and what the accusations were back then under this genocide, which is an actual law, not a company limited by guarantee. Now, there's another thing that was brought up in this Uyghur show trial, if you want to call it, that's been going on for some months. And one was the idea of compulsory sterilization. And I just wanted to point this out as a fellow American, as a lawyer, and taking a look at the laws, policies, and regulations that we have in the United States. What is compulsory sterilization? It's known as forced or coerced sterilization, and it's a government-mandated program to sterilize a specific group of people. Okay, now, for nearly 30 years, the Supreme Court Justice, there's a guy called Oliver Wendell Holmes, very, very bright guy, probably the brightest guy that was ever on this Supreme Court, wrote a lot of cases about freedom of speech, and freedom of speech is so very important. But one of the cases he did write had to do with a case called Buck versus Bell. And in Buck versus Bell, in a Supreme Court case, it said that 3 generations of imbeciles is enough. That was his quote, saying that there is forced sterilization, which is the law of the land today in the United States. So what I'm trying to do is point out to everybody here that there are laws, that there are policies, that there are regulations, and that they need to be followed in order to come to a conclusion. We don't want, everybody loves a good gossip. Everybody loves a good quote unquote media lynch mob, but people have to, the devil and God are in the details with regards to laws, policies, and regulations. And it simply has not been adhered to with regards to this so-called Uyghur tribunal. It is not reviewing evidence. It is not an impartial situation, even in the Nuremberg trials. So for those of you who know, at Nazi Germany, at the close of World War II, that there was, the Nuremberg trials were set up, and then there were also trials that were in the Philippines for what happened in Asia for the Japanese. Each of these persons was given a lawyer, Hermann Göring, Rudolf Hess, Albert Speer. These were all given lawyers, and they were all given a chance to bring their case and their evidence. Certainly, there were people that were actually found innocent. There was the head of the economy, a fellow by the name of Schacht. He was represented by legal counsel. There was evidence. It was a legitimate tribunal, and this is not a legitimate tribunal. So what you have here is a bunch of headline-grabbing public relations people that are causing cognitive dissonance using a guy like Jeffrey Nice, who I'm sure is a nice enough person, but just completely misguided to be able to sign, seal, and deliver some kind of, I don't know, proclamation on a bunch of stuff that sounds legitimate, but is completely illegitimate. So China has signed up to the Convention on Genocide. The United States has signed up for it, as have many other nations. And they're not following these laws, policies, and regulations. And the thing is it's a bit of a laugh. And what happens in this crazy world today is that all people do is grab headlines and nobody's actually unpacking it until it takes some lawyer or legal person to try to unpack and give this idea that this is really not fair. Everybody's entitled to a defense. Everybody's entitled to due process. And there has been none of that for the People's Republic of China with regards to this. This has been brought up, by the way. There have been different states within the United States. There have been different countries that have said that this is genocide and brought this up. Each of them has the right to bring it under the United Nations Genocide Convention. Each of them has not done it, or each of them has failed to do it. So what they need to do is follow the laws, policies, and regulations, which the world has established, which the United Nations has established, which and they refuse to do it in order to smear and grab headlines. And so I don't think that that's a very fair way to go about it. And what we're trying to do, everybody deserves advocacy, and that's what we learn in law school. Bad people, people who are accused of different things involve advocacy, and that's how the system can become great, because there is this tension, and it's set out by laws, policies, and regulations that we've all signed up to. The Uyghur Tribunal is not that. It is a charade, and it's unfortunate because there may or may not be something there to it, but it's not the right avenue to go forward with it. Well, with that, I would like to say thank you very much for letting me participate, and I hope to be available if there's any questions or comments further on in the discussion.